Deadpool and Wolverine came out recently, and as most MCU projects have been doing, it introduces new aspects of the TVA and the multiverse. In the time between the movie coming out and me making this video, nothing else happened. There was no other big, crazy, fandom-dividing announcement that came out. I don't know what you're talking about. Now, this insane news drought has got me thinking about the multiverse as a concept, and why everyone and their mothers are doing nothing with it. The multiverse is endless with its possibilities. You can explore an infinite number of different things that can challenge and grow your main characters. But, in modern media, it's being used as an excuse to shoehorn in different collaborations or nostalgic castings. At its best, it can be used to deep dive into characters and challenge their worldview. At its worst, it's a convoluted mess that leaves you scrambling to try to understand it. It's no secret that the general audience is getting tired of the multiverse, but that begs the question, has the multiverse been overused, or has it just been used poorly? Let's look into it. Now, the most obvious example of the modern multiverse craze is the MCU, with it literally being in its second phase of the multiverse saga. But I'm not going to start there. Instead, I'm going to start with the CW Flash show. Now, this isn't the first example of the multiverse being introduced in the media. It was a semi-big part of Doctor Who Season 2, and it was probably in other shows or movies. I don't really know, I couldn't find many good examples. Anyways, my first exposure to the multiverse was The Flash Season 2, with the introduction of Zoom, Jay, Harry, and Earth 2 as a whole. While not the first time the multiverse had been adapted, it was the first time that it really got noticed, and it was actually done pretty well. It introduced new characters, new threats, we got to explore the Earth and see all the differences between it and Earth 1, as well as posing actual challenges for the members of Team Flash. Barry and the team had an easy out following episode 14. They closed all the breaches, saved Harry's daughter, and trapped Zoom on Earth 2. However, this is a glimpse into Barry's character. When going to save Jesse, Barry is repeatedly told that everything on Earth 2 isn't his life, and he shouldn't care about it. However, following their time there, Barry has immense guilt about showing up and changing the lives of Earth 2 Barry and Iris, as well as leaving a whole world under Zoom's control. Then, there's also the character drama between Cisco and Caitlin. They both undergo arcs where they're freaked out about themselves and their powers because of their doppelgangers. Cisco is worried that he'd turn into Reverb and initially refuses to help Barry get back to Earth 2. He's also initially worried that Caitlin might go bad because of Jay's death, and she trolls him about this, but when Barry makes Flashpoint, she gets ice powers and starts to worry about becoming Frost. At the beginning, at least, the show actually handled the multiverse pretty well, using it to develop characters as well as providing cool moments and ideas. On top of that, since it was the first quote-unquote mainstream use of the multiverse, it was a fresh idea. I remember losing my mind when I found out that episodes 13 and 14 were going to be set on Earth 2, because back in 2016, traveling the multiverse was such a fucking dope idea. Eventually, the novelty wore off because of inconsistencies with the writing, and it just got used too much. On multiple occasions, the show contradicted itself, specifically about the number of Earths out there. Sometimes there were infinite worlds. Other times, there were only 52. But then, during the explanation where there are only 52 Earths, they say that there's actually 53. And then there's the fact that Cisco can go to any Earth at any point, and then there's Gypsy and Breacher, and there are devices that let other people dimension hop. What started as a small-scale, character-driven idea later became a big part of most of these Arrowverse shows, and then it started to lose its effectiveness. Moving on, I know I set up the idea that I'd be looking at these multiversal projects chronologically, but I lied. Next up, I want to talk about Rick and Morty, which started in 2013, so whoops. Specifically, I want to look at the Season 1 episode Rick Potion number 9. For anyone who hasn't seen it before, this episode is about Rick making a potion so that Morty's crush would fall in love with him. However, due to her having the flu, that potion spreads to everybody in the school. In an attempt to fix this, Rick Cronenbergs the world, and then in an attempt to fix that fuck-up, he Cronenbergs the world even worse. Due to this, Rick decides to take Morty to a dimension where they actually fixed everything, and then fucking died, so they both take their places and continue on as if nothing happened. I really like this episode and how it explores both Rick and Morty's worldviews. Rick can't care less. For him, this is inconsequential, and it can be interpreted that he's abandoned other worlds before. It explores the idea that in an infinite multiverse, no choice actually matters because there's always another world to fall back on. If one world dies, there's another where you can slip right in and have everything you just lost. On the other hand, Morty has to grapple with that same conclusion, but from the opposite end. He hasn't had to do this, so in this instance he's dealing with the fact that his selfish antics destroyed his world, and now they're supposed to bury their own doppelgangers as if their lives didn't matter. Rick and Morty are on opposite ends of this spectrum. Rick doesn't value life, so he thinks that nothing matters, while Morty now has to come to terms with the fact that in this multiverse, anything and everything can go wrong in a mere instant. Hell, he could die, and it wouldn't matter. This is one of my favorite uses of the multiverse, because it has a purpose. There's a specific idea that the show is going for when using it, and it's used to inform the audience on how Rick and Morty act as characters. I think that the important thing to keep in mind when using the multiverse is that whether or not you want to use nostalgia, there has to be a reason behind it. It will never work when the entire reason for having a multiverse is to bring back familiar faces. The multiverse only works when it serves as a catalyst for a character-driven story, not when it's a plot device that brings back X actors from the 80s or 90s or who gives a fuck. Now, I want to look at one more example of something that works for the most part. This is a show that I used to watch religiously, and it has had more of an impact on my life than The Flash has, which is insane considering that I've made a collective 5 hours of content on that show. The show I'm referring to is Ben 10, which started to explore the multiverse in the show Omniverse. Now, at the start of Season 6, or the end of Season 5, I got conflicting results when watching the episodes. There's a 2-episode arc about the main villain creating a multiversal team of Bens who would go around and kill all the good versions of him. This leads them to a universe where Ben, or anyone in his family, never found the Omnitrix. This variant always felt like something was missing, like he was meant to be doing more, but that opportunity just never came. Until he was attacked by this multiversal group of Bens. In the ensuing fight, every version of him, except for the one without the watch, gets wiped from existence, so Ben Prime, as he's referred to, gives his Omnitrix to the one who never got it. In the following episode, this Ben has to go around and fix timelines to ensure that this multiversal group doesn't win. In the process, he is responsible for Ben Prime getting the original watch. He gathers the teams that saves him in the first place, and then brings them all back to life after they got erased. While this is a kids show and it isn't really shown well, the idea behind this is that the watch isn't what makes Ben a hero, it's just a tool that helps him with it. Of course, it's a kids show with 22-minute episodes. It tries its best, but it's limited by the fact that this Ben, who doesn't have a watch, only becomes important because he's given one. It's also the first example I have here that starts to get messy with the rules of the multiverse, claiming that this Ben is the only one in the multiverse who never finds out about the Omnitrix. This just isn't how a multiverse would work. In the end, it's a story that, while having a message behind it, loses itself in rules and fan service. So this is an example of an almost good multiverse story. But it only gets worse from here. Invincible Season 2 was almost doomed from the start because, in terms of following its source material, it had a few multiversal storylines coming up, and the first one happened to line up exactly with Marvel and DC's multiverse phase. So, right off the bat, through no fault of its own, it got lumped in with the rest of the multiversal slop coming out. However, through its own faults, the multiverse really served no value in Season 2. Now, I do love Invincible, but Season 2 was a bit of a step down from Season 1, and that's mostly because of its villain, Angstrom Levy. He is really only a threat in 2 episodes, and those are the premiere and finale. Now, Angstrom has the ability to travel the multiverse, and at first, he uses this to try to make the world a better place. However, when he tries to stop his machine to save Mark, he ends up melding his brain with all of his other variants. This sets him on a path to kill Mark, because he was bombarded with the memories of variants whose lives were ruined by the evil versions of Mark. However, this idea breaks down because they present it the same way as the Omnitrix problem. The main universe we're seeing is supposedly the only one where Mark defies his father and stays a hero. Except Angstrom, in all his infinite wisdom, attacks this good one instead of using his abilities to go after any of the infinite evil ones. This is stupid though. In the multiverse, there should be an infinite amount of worlds, so there are an infinite amount of good and bad Marks out there, not just one good one. Anyways, in the finale, Angstrom attacks Mark and sends him to multiple other universes. In the process, Mark ends up in the Walking Dead universe, a reference to the fact that Robert Kirkman helped create that, and that Stephen Yeun was in the show. However, Mark also gets to meet not Spider-Man and not Batman, as a reference to the comics without having the rights to the actual characters. These moments are relegated to very brief sequences, lasting less than a minute at most. They don't actually develop the story or anyone's characters, and are purely there for fan service. This is where the concept of the multiverse stops being unique and interesting, and it's just tacky and forced. It serves no purpose, and it doesn't actually work if you put that much thought into it. The finale had to halt the plot just to have a bunch of cameos that don't matter to the story. I have a few critiques for Season 2, but they aren't necessarily things that are wrong with the show specifically. It's more just the source material, because Season 2 was adapted pretty faithfully. I might make a full video on it later, but for now, that's all I got. Now, this brings me to the mother of all bad multiverse films. Do I have to? Fuck it. I'm gonna talk about the Flash movie. I've already levied one criticism against it, which was about its use of CGI that turned this already ugly suit into a volcanic mess. However, this movie is a perfect example of how nostalgia can ruin what could otherwise be interesting. In an adaptation of Flashpoint, the movie abandons the time travel aspect of the story and instead places Barry in an alternate universe, in which his mother is alive, Clark Kent was murdered by Zod, Bruce Wayne is Michael Keaton for some reason, etc. See, it still borrows time travel ideas, but then presents it as if it's a multiverse film. By saving his mother's life, Barry exits his timeline and enters one that has this desired outcome. However, despite being in an alternate world, where everyone and everything is different, somehow, the lightning bolt that gave Barry his powers still hits on the same day at the same time. And also, Zod attacks Earth at the same time, despite being a different world. For whatever reason, it latches onto the idea of the multiverse being a series of branching timelines, but then has Barry end up in a world that's completely different from the one he came from. Then, there's the fact that they bring back Michael Keaton as Batman just for the hell of it, and they stop the movie dead in its tracks to use CGI to have cameos of past heroes whose actors passed away. It's a gross scene, and it's the epitome of why nostalgia shouldn't be a guiding force for multiverse stories. Anyways, the biggest problem is that this movie introduces something called inevitable intersections. They are things that are always going to happen, and they can't be changed. No, that's not how any of this works. Going back and changing things will lead to differences in timelines. There is nothing that is guaranteed to happen because anyone who can time travel can change these things. And in a world where branching timelines have been established, that means that there are infinite branches where specific things don't happen. Once again, the movie is bogged down by nonsensical rules and rose-tinted glasses for old franchises that ran their course and should be respectfully allowed to rest. Anyways, now we can move on to the thing that actually inspired this video, Deadpool and Wolverine. There are spoilers in this section, so here's your warning. Considering that Marvel has been pumping out multiverse content, the question is, did this lead to the oversaturation of this genre, or are they just doing a bad job? Well, I've talked about the problems with the MCU multiverse before, so I'm not going to go in depth about Loki or Kang or anything, but instead, I'm going to look at what's going on now. There's a rumor that in the Fantastic Four movie, Galactus will be revealed to be the only variant in the entire multiverse. That just doesn't work. I really hate when writers try to make artificial stakes in the multiverse, especially when it's established time and time again that the MCU multiverse is made up of branching timelines. And then there's Deadpool and Wolverine, which brings back the TVA and continues fucking with the rules of time travel and the multiverse. The film introduces the concept of anchor beings, which are people who are so important to a universe that when they die, the universe starts to fade along with them. It's said that the universe is destroyed within a couple thousand years following the anchor's death. This begs the question, why? What makes somebody so important that their death dooms a whole timeline? Also, they kind of fuck up their own timeline in this one. The movie Logan takes place in 2029, while Deadpool and Wolverine is in 2024. At the end of the film, Wade brings the variant of Logan to his Earth, where we see them both interact with Wade's family and friends, along with X-23. However, it's unclear if this is the X-23 that was in the Void with them, or if this is supposed to be the Laura from Wade's Earth, because if she is from Wade's Earth, she wouldn't have met Logan yet, and she'd be like 7. Also, there are now 2 Logans in that timeline. Overall, while I really like Deadpool and Wolverine, it continues the trend of the MCU not actually understanding how the multiverse works. If that rumor about Galactus is true, then they've already broken that by including Chris Evans as Johnny Storm. That version of the Fantastic Four have already dealt with a Galactus, and that world is now canon to the MCU multiverse. When the multiverse is made up of multiple timelines that split based on decisions, there's an infinite number of everything and everyone. There are 8 billion people all making multiple decisions throughout a day. This is a rough estimate, but it's said that most people make up to 35,000 choices per day. So 35,000 choices spread across 8 billion people is 280 trillion choices in one day. And all those choices make up one single timeline. The number gets way too big if you try to quantify how many variations there can be. This just means that every choice made by America, or by anyone using the Book of Vishanti, or by Galactus himself would cause a split timeline, which would mean that there's now multiple timelines where they exist. Marvel writers just don't seem to grasp that. At the very least, Deadpool and Wolverine doesn't try to pull any of that. But that isn't to say that Marvel never does anything right with the multiverse, it's just a lot of the good shit comes from Spider-Man. The 2 Spider-Verse movies are goldmines in terms of character building when it comes to the multiverse. My favorite of the 2 is Across the Spider-Verse, where the arcs of the main characters are only enhanced by its inclusion. Miles can't bring himself to tell his parents who he is. He's scared of how they'll react. He's scared they won't accept him. So, when Gwen comes back and he hears about the Spider Society, he sees a ticket to hang out with people who will accept him. Except they don't. He's completely rejected and is cited as the entire reason that the multiverse is in danger. He's an anomaly. He's not supposed to be Spider-Man. Miles clashing with Miguel is set up to go against the idea of this consistency in the multiverse. Miguel seeks to adhere to a canon where certain things are supposed to happen in every universe. Miles, instead of being the only thing to break that, is ground zero for things starting to fall apart. He isn't the only one, he's just the catalyst for proving that Miguel is wrong. And on top of that, it just goes to show how strong Miles is. His mom worries that the rest of the world won't look out for him like she does, and by the end, Miles has this big emotional moment where he reveals himself to her, albeit an alternate version of her. He isn't afraid anymore, he knows who he is, and nobody can take that from him. Gwen has a similar arc about learning to accept herself and fighting for what she believes in, not what authority figures tell her to. These arcs are self-contained, they're natural progressions for these characters, and the arcs are only built upon by the inclusion of the multiverse. When including something like this, it should support what the movie is trying to say, it shouldn't just be there for show. Another good example of it is in No Way Home. I didn't really touch on this in my MCU Spider-Man video because I had just binged through 8 Spider-Man films. I was tired, leave me alone. MCU Peter has a really good arc in that movie, and it's only helped by the multiversal villains. That movie flips Spidey's origin on its head. The usual story shows Peter being irresponsible and getting his uncle killed for it. This time around, Peter tries to do the right thing. Sending these villains home is playing with their lives. They would effectively be sentencing some of them to death. Peter has the power to do something, he has the Stark tech to help them, and he interferes with Strange's ritual, and that costs May her life. Instead of sticking to the origin we've seen so many times, it uses the multiverse to explore a new aspect of Peter's mindset. It falls back on the theme of responsibility, and it works really well. These 2 movies also use nostalgia really well. Across the Spider-Verse features cameos from multiple different things. Donald Glover as the Prowler, Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire. They don't overstay their welcome, only showing up as a fun nod to fans and also to enhance the story, although the live-action Prowler was purely fan service. No Way Home also featured the other Spider-Man, but rather than having them as cameos, they become supporting cast members and help the main Peter after May's death. The MCU's main issue with the multiverse is inconsistent and lazy writing, and too much focus on the past. With each new universe that is introduced, they focus a lot on fan service that doesn't actually serve the plot. Multiverse of Madness halts the movie to have an extended cameo fest just to prove that Wanda is a real threat, only to have her never use these powers on the main characters. Kang brags about killing alternate versions of the Avengers, only to be beaten by ants. The writers use the multiverse to create these artificial threats. We're supposed to be scared for our heroes because these villains managed to beat them in other timelines, but these villains never actually use their lethal moves, and we never get to see how powerful the Avengers variants are. The multiverse is something that should be used as a tool to enhance stories and characters, not as something that is the basis for all of it. When your supposed big bad has all of his quote-unquote menace stemming from the fact that he's supposedly killed multiple variants of the Avengers, we better be able to see those battles, or that villain should actually pose a threat to the main heroes. Instead, Kang's character was based on exposition from worlds we've never seen, and then he gets defeated by ants. The main point that I want to make is that the multiverse should be something that is used to enhance storylines, not something that is used as a crutch to bring back old actors, or to arbitrarily make something seem more powerful. With that being said, I don't have anything else to talk about, so I'm just gonna... What the fuck? Funny that this happens right when I'm doing a video on the Oh shit! Oh man, I finally escaped that awful universe where RDJ was cast as Doom. Now what was this me up to? Oh, we're making a video about the multiverse. And we're talking about the MCU? Oh no, wait. Oh god, no, please, God damn it! Okay, so I've been avoiding the elephant in the room revolving around the multiverse. At San Diego Comic-Con, Kevin Feige and the Russo brothers announced the return of Robert Downey Jr., not as Iron Man, but as Doctor Doom, the main villain for Avengers Doomsday and probably for Secret Wars as well. This begs a few questions. What is their plan? Is this Victor Von Doom or a Tony Stark variant? Is this just a senseless nostalgia bait cash grab because the MCU is dying? Personally, I don't know. It can definitely come across as a ploy to save their sinking ship, because we already knew what Avengers 5 was supposed to be. 2 years ago, it was the Kang Dynasty, but since Jonathan Majors got fired, they decided to completely change the direction this saga was going in. In doing so, now more than ever, it seems like they have no plan, and are resorting to bringing back RDJ as the face of the MCU. However, I also think that there could be some interesting ideas to explore here. The entire video has been about how the multiverse should be used to explore meaningful ideas and character arcs. What better way to explore that than to have the original MCU hero, someone who had a relationship with so many characters, return as the next big bad? There are so many interesting ramifications that this can have, and so many compelling character arcs. But, on the other hand, that comes with the risk of butchering this entire story. Butchering the character of Doom, wasting a villain on a Hail Mary instead of fully fleshing them out like Thanos was. I don't know how the story is going to play out, but I can only hope that they've thought this one through, because if they don't nail it, and hell, even if they do, this announcement has alienated a lot of their fanbase. Now, for the real conclusion of this video. Is the multiverse an overused trope, or has it just been used poorly? The answer is, quite honestly, a mix of both. There's no denying that the multiverse as a concept has been used a lot recently, and whether good or bad, it can get tiring. However, I think, similarly to how people were talking about superhero movie fatigue, general audiences aren't tired of multiverse stories, they're tired of bad multiverse stories. Movies like Everything Everywhere All at Once and Spider-Verse are proof of that. Those are multiverse stories. They were released in a time where the multiverse concept was everywhere and people were complaining about it. However, Everything Everywhere All at Once won multiple Oscars, and Across the Spider-Verse is one of the best Marvel movies ever made. So while the multiverse is definitely being used a lot, the biggest issue is that nobody can use it properly. If the writers would stop and actually work to understand the multiverse and stop adding in these impossible rules, then there would be no problems. The multiverse saga isn't bad because it's focused on the multiverse, it's bad because the stories themselves are shit. Right now, the best thing coming out of the MCU is Deadpool and Wolverine, because despite its confusing rules, it actually has heart, and it's character-focused. It's a love letter to what came before it, and it focuses on its two titular characters. While its plot could be better, and the multiverse could be refined, the most important thing to do when writing a story is to make sure that you care about it. Right now, nobody cares about the multiverse because the writers don't care about the multiverse. And on that note, I'm actually going to end the video. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing for more content like this. With that, I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye!